November 18th, 2004 was an unusually warm Thursday evening in my hometown. The week before Thanksgiving, grocery stores and families everywhere were preparing. I was 11 years old. My dad and I were driving to my aunt's house. My dad was a mechanic in his spare time, and he often did jobs for family members, like my aunt's oil change. He grabbed his tools, lowered himself onto the creeper, and set to work. I was in charge of managing the radio, so if Boston or CCR came on, turn up the volume. As my dad finished, he grabbed a rag and called it a job well done. The last thing to do was the test drive. We jumped in the minivan and eased the van out of the garage, down the long driveway, and into the street. We arrived at the stoplight just as the light turned green. My dad rolled forward and, after looking both ways, accelerated straight ahead. I heard the collision before I felt it. A combination of metal crunching, tire smoking, glass smashing, and my screams filled all of my senses. I screwed my eyes shut as a blue Dodge pickup hit the driver's side of the van at 45 miles per hour. I felt the van spin 90 degrees before colliding with another vehicle. I stretched out my hand for my dad, but found a much more feminine figure. I opened my eyes to a middle-aged woman with black hair and kind green eyes and scrubs, prying my eyelids open as she called for help. The ambulance arrived, its sirens continuing the daze my body was experiencing. All I could hear was buzzing. I moved to open my mouth, but as I lowered my jaw, it fell and I could not shut my mouth. I was loaded onto a stretcher and into the ambulance, where I was finally reunited with my dad as he was brought into the ambulance completely incoherent. The paramedics discovered that I couldn't hear because I had glass in my ear. As a hand moved from my ear to my right lower jaw, I discovered why I was unable to close my mouth. Pain seared through my head. My jaw had been broken. The ride to the hospital was extreme torture, and with each bump, my body ached. As I was wheeled into the emergency room, I heard the page go over the intercom, "Doctor to the operating room." My mom and sisters met me as we entered and told me they would see me when I was done. My dad and I were separated as I rounded several corners and was rushed into anesthesiology. I began my count of the alphabet backwards, but I was out before I reached C. I opened my eyes to the startling image of white everywhere in my 9th floor room. My mom greeted me and hollered for the doctor. I opened my mouth to speak, but I couldn't. Wires had been placed around my stylish braces in an attempt to heal my jawbone. I began to panic when I realized something was off. I was unable to breathe through my nose. My hand instinctively reached up to my nose and was greeted by a hose leading from my left nostril to a container in case I vomited and was unable to open my mouth. Though it was a typical procedure, removing the tube was more painful than breaking my jaw. My jaw would be wired shut for 6 long, excruciating weeks, where my diet was restricted to liquids. I was given cookbooks on how to liquidize hamburgers, but rather than sucking down pickles and cheese, I opted for smoothies and protein shakes. Several days after my discharge, my father was finally released. He had 3 broken ribs and permanent nerve damage in his left foot. Due to the fact that I was unable to eat for several weeks and my dad's ribs were healing, the traditional family feast was not an option for either of us. My dad and I spent our turkey-lacking holiday in comfy recliners, slurping down a combination of smoothies and pudding drinks. November 18th is a day which in my book will never be forgotten.